In this video, we'll be taking a look at 5 MLB games happening on April 11, 2026, and providing you with free team picks and total picks for each one of those games, so 10 picks in total. Welcome back to Cash Out Sports. Let's dive right into it. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe and to click the bell icon to get notified as soon as these videos get released, so that you have more time to plan out your bets as we provide these videos on a daily basis. I can guarantee that you'll have all the important information that you'll need on these 5 MLB games after fully watching this video. One more thing before we start: if you would like to gain access to our best exclusive sports picks to take your journey to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below, where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Now let's get started. Arizona Diamondbacks versus Philadelphia Phillies. There's something about a team that just refuses to go away, and that's exactly what Arizona has been doing on this road trip. You look at the Diamondbacks sitting at 8-6 on the season, winners of 3 straight, and you start to realize this isn't some fluke hot streak. They just walked into New York and slapped the Mets around twice, 7-2 and 7-1, then came into Citizens Bank Park last night and gutted out a 5-4 comeback win against Philadelphia after trailing 4-0 in the 5th inning. That kind of resilience tells you something about the DNA of this club. Meanwhile, the Phillies are sitting at 6-7, losers of 3 consecutive games and 4 of their last 5. Honestly, this is not what anyone expected from a team many picked to contend for the National League East crown again. They got shut out back-to-back against San Francisco right before this series, and the offense looks genuinely lost right now. Philadelphia is batting just .220 on the season, and their numbers with runners in scoring position are even uglier at .200, which is second worst in baseball. Now here's where it gets really interesting for today's game. The Phillies are sending Taijuan Walker to the mound, and Walker has been nothing short of a disaster so far, carrying a 9.31 earned run average through his early starts with an 0-2 record. His spot in the rotation is reportedly on borrowed time, with Zach Wheeler making rehab starts and inching closer to a return. On the other side, Arizona sends out Brandon Pivat, who has a 6.75 earned run average, so he hasn't been lights out either, but there's a massive difference between shaky and full-blown combustion. The Diamondbacks pitching staff as a whole has been one of the better units in the National League, carrying a 3.67 earned run average that ranks in the top 15 league-wide. And you can't ignore what Arizona's bats have been doing lately. Corbin Carroll is swinging a hot stick at .333 with 14 hits through the early going, and guys like Ketel Marte and Ildemaro Vargas have been finding ways to come through in big moments. Last night, Marte delivered a 2 RBI single in that huge 5th inning rally. Yes, the Diamondbacks are dealing with a long injury list, missing Lourdes Gurriel Jr. to a knee issue, Carlos Santana with a groin problem, Corbin Burns on the 60-day IL with an elbow injury, and Merrill Kelly sidelined with a back issue. That's a lot of firepower on the shelf. But here's the thing, they keep winning anyway. The guys filling in, players like Jorge Barosa and Jose Fernandez, are contributing enough to keep this machine running. Arizona is also 10-3 against the spread this season, which just tells you the market keeps undervaluing them. Philadelphia, on the other hand, is a brutal 3-9 against the spread. The books keep laying chalk on the Phillies, and the Phillies keep letting people down. You combine a struggling Philly offense, a starter in Walker who can't find his footing, a Diamondbacks team riding serious momentum and confidence, and a plus-money price tag on Arizona, and the value practically screams at you. As our first pick for this matchup, the Arizona Diamondbacks money line is our full game side pick. Let's talk about the run environment here, because Citizens Bank Park has always been one of those venues where the ball just carries. According to StatCast Ballpark Factors, it ranks as the 3rd most homer-friendly park in all of baseball. That's not some random trivia, that's a structural advantage for offense every single time 2 teams take the field there. Last night we saw 9 combined runs in a game where the Phillies actually had their better starter on the mound in Jesus Luzardo, and Arizona was throwing Michael Soroka, who had been nearly untouchable. If those 2 pitchers combined for 9 runs, just imagine what happens when you swap them out for Pivat and Walker. Pivat has a 6.75 earned run average through his early work, and Walker is sporting that bloated 9.31 mark. Neither of these guys inspires any confidence that they can keep the other lineup quiet for long. Walker has already been getting tagged hard, and Philadelphia's bullpen has been asked to do a lot of heavy lifting lately because starters aren't going deep into games. That's a recipe for tired arms and mistake pitches. On the Arizona side, Fat can be hittable when he's not commanding his stuff, and the Phillies have shown they can explode when they do connect. Kyle Schwarber already has 3 home runs on the season and slugged .775 against four-seam fastballs last year. Bryce Harper went 2 for 4 with a double and an RBI last night. Brandon Marsh launched a 3-run homer in the first inning of last night's game. When the Philly bats wake up, even briefly, they can do serious damage in that park. And Arizona's offense has been showing real life lately, scoring 7, 7, and 5 in their last 3 games. You put all of this together, 2 pitchers who've been giving up runs freely, a ballpark that inflates offense, 2 teams that combined for 9 runs last night with arguably better pitching on the mound, and the conditions just feel ripe for crooked numbers on both sides of the scoreboard. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Miami Marlins versus Detroit Tigers. There's something about a team that's been taking punches all week and finally comes home to its own crowd, its own dugout, its own ballpark. Detroit's had a rough stretch, there's no sugarcoating that. Dropping 5 straight to Minnesota on the road would rattle just about any clubhouse, and the early season record sitting under .500 doesn't exactly scream confidence. But here's the thing, sometimes the betting market gets too cute with recent results and forgets what a team actually is when you strip away a bad week. This Tigers roster isn't some rebuilding project anymore. Last season they made the postseason, they had a legitimate ace in Tarek Skubal, and they went out and added Framber Valdez and brought back Jack Flaherty to build one of the deeper rotations in the American League. Today's starter had a breakout 2025, earning his first career All-Star nod and finishing with a 14-6 record and just under a 3.9 earned run average. His first outing of 2026 was electric, 6 innings of 1-run ball with 9 punch-outs against Arizona, the kind of performance that reminds you why he was the first overall pick back in 2018. Yes, his second start didn't go as smoothly and that inflated his early season numbers a bit, but one rough outing doesn't erase who a pitcher fundamentally is. And when he commands that splitter and gets hitters to beat the ball into the ground, he's a totally different animal. Now look at who Miami's sending to the mound. Their 5th starter, a journeyman righty who's bounced through 4 organizations. He had a respectable 2025 in Miami, but let's not forget how that season ended, an elbow issue that landed him on the injured list, and a second-half earned run average that ballooned north of 6. He's posted a decent line so far in a couple of starts this year, sure, but he's not the kind of arm that makes opposing lineups lose sleep. And speaking of lineups, Detroit's got some legitimate thunder in the order even with injuries piling up. Colt Keith is swinging a scorching bat early, sitting around a .350 average and looking like the breakout third baseman everybody projected him to be. Dylan Dingler behind the plate has been turning heads as one of the young players opening eyes around the league. Riley Green, Kerry Carpenter, Gleyber Torres, Spencer Torkelson. This is a lineup with real pop that just hasn't clicked consistently yet during the road trip. Coming home to Comerica Park, where they're 2-1 so far this season, could be exactly the spark they need. Miami's been a pleasant surprise this year, no question about it. Xavier Edwards is hitting nearly .400 and Clayton McCulloch has this young team playing with energy. But the Marlins have been a different animal on the road, carrying just a 1-2 record away from home. They're also banged up in their own right, missing Christopher Morel, Kyle Stowers, and Esteury Ruiz from a lineup that needs all hands on deck when traveling. When you strip away the flashy overall record and look at what this team actually does away from Lone Depot Park, the picture changes quite a bit. Honestly, this feels like a classic letdown spot for Miami and a get-right game for Detroit. The Tigers are desperate, they're home, they've got a former All-Star on the bump who's shown flashes of dominance already. And the market's probably overcorrecting on that 5-game skid. Sometimes the best value is buying low on a talented team that's been running bad. As our first pick for this matchup, the Detroit Tigers money line is our full game side pick. Cold April air at Comerica Park has a funny way of making baseballs feel heavier. When game time temperatures are sitting in the low 50s in Detroit, the ball just doesn't carry the same way it does in July, and that matters more than most people give it credit for. Comerica Park is already one of the more spacious yards in the big leagues with deep outfield dimensions that eat up fly balls. So you add in chilly Michigan weather on a Saturday afternoon and you've got a recipe for suppressed offense. Both arms on the mound today throw from the right side, and both have the ability to limit damage when they're locked in. Detroit's starter showed what his ceiling looks like in his first outing this year. 9 strikeouts with pinpoint command of his secondary stuff. When he's inducing ground balls and keeping the ball in the yard, opposing lineups just don't generate crooked numbers against him. Miami's starter, for all his inconsistencies, does one thing exceptionally well: he doesn't walk people. Last year he posted the lowest walk rate in all of baseball during his time in Miami, just 2.9%, which means he's not going to put free runners on base and let innings snowball. That's a trait that plays well in a pitcher's park on a cold day. Miami's offense has looked great at home, but their road numbers tell a much quieter story. Their lineup has been significantly less productive away from their own ballpark, and facing a pitcher with swing and miss stuff in an unfriendly hitting environment is a tough ask. Detroit's offense, meanwhile, has been inconsistent all season long. They've scored some runs in bursts but also been shut down completely in several games, including a 2-0 loss and a 4-2 loss just this past week. Neither team's offense is running on all cylinders right now, and that's exactly the kind of situation where the pitching and the park take over. You've also got to consider the bullpen factor. Detroit's relief corps has been taxed from that rough Minnesota series, but so has Miami's pen after some extra inning affairs recently, including that wild 6-3 loss in Cincinnati that went into extras. When both bullpens are a little gassed, managers tend to ride their starters deeper, and 2 competent right-handers going deeper into games means fewer base runners and fewer chances for crooked innings in the late frames. Everything about this game screams low-scoring affair. The park, the weather, the pitching matchup, the road struggles of the visiting lineup, it all points in one direction. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Pittsburgh Pirates versus Chicago Cubs. All right, folks, let's talk about this Pittsburgh Pirates and Chicago Cubs matchup at Wrigley Field on April 11th, because there's a lot more going on here than what the odds makers are telling you. The Pirates are rolling into the Windy City with an 8-5 record, sitting pretty in second place in the National League Central, and honestly, this isn't the same Pittsburgh team you're used to ignoring. This offseason, they went out and got Brandon Lowe, Ryan O'Hearn, and Marcell Ozuna to inject some actual power into a lineup that hit the fewest home runs in all of baseball last year. They also just locked up Connor Griffin, the #1 prospect in baseball, to a long-term extension after his much-anticipated debut. That's a franchise making a statement. Now here's the thing, the Cubs are 6-7 and just dropped Game 1 of this series 2-0 yesterday. Chicago's bats have been inconsistent all year, and while Nico Hoerner has been swinging a hot stick with a .333 average and a 1 OPS through the early going, guys like Alex Bregman are hitting just .188 and the lineup has looked disjointed. Seiya Suzuki just came back from a knee injury suffered in the WBC, but rust is a real thing when you're jumping straight into live pitching after missing time. On the mound, the Cubs send out Edward Cabrera, who was acquired from the Marlins this offseason. His 0 earned run average in 2 starts looks incredible on paper, but let me explain why that number is a little deceiving. In his last outing against the Guardians, Cabrera walked 5 batters in just 5.2 innings. He only allowed 1 hit, sure, but that walk rate tells you he was laboring, nibbling, unable to locate consistently. That's been the story of Cabrera's entire career, electric stuff but shaky command, and the walks have a way of catching up to pitchers like that. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh counters with Braxton Ashcraft, a 26-year-old righty who has been legitimately excellent to start 2026. Ashcraft has posted back-to-back 6-inning outings this season with a 2.25 earned run average, a 1 WHIP, and a .195 batting average allowed. He's not just surviving, he's keeping hitters off balance with consistency that you don't always see from young arms. His rookie year was impressive too, a 2.71 earned run average across nearly 70 innings in a swingman role, and now that he's settled into the rotation, he looks even more comfortable. The Pirates as a team rank 7th in earned run average, and their pitching staff has a 35% strikeout rate in late innings, the best mark in all of Major League Baseball. That bullpen depth matters when the game gets tight. And Pittsburgh just proved they can win this exact matchup at this exact ballpark, shutting out the Cubs yesterday. O'Hearn is hitting .350 with a .625 slugging percentage. O'Neill Cruz is slugging .583, and even though Ozuna is ice cold to start the year hitting .065, the lineup around him has enough firepower to carry the load. The Cubs historically dominate the Pirates at Wrigley, winning 10 of 13 meetings last season, and that's not nothing. But this isn't last year's Pirates. This is a team that went on a 5-game winning streak before a small stumble against the Padres and has been profitable on the money line all season. Getting plus money on an 8-5 team with a pitcher who's been dealing, going up against a starter who can't find the zone consistently, that's the kind of value that jumps off the page. As our first pick for this matchup, the Pittsburgh Pirates money line is our full game side pick. Now let's talk about how many runs are actually going to cross the plate today, because there's a strong case that this one stays quiet. Yesterday's game finished 2-0. 6 of the last 7 meetings between these two teams at Wrigley Field have gone under the total runs line. That's not a coincidence, that's a pattern, and patterns like that tend to stick when the conditions are right. And the conditions are very right. It's early April in Chicago. The cold air at Wrigley suppresses fly balls, kills home run carry, and turns what would be deep shots in July into lazy flyouts to center. You know how Wrigley plays in the summer with the wind blowing out, but in April the ballpark becomes a pitcher's paradise. Both starters today have been keeping runs off the board. Ashcraft's 2.25 earned run average speaks for itself, and Cabrera literally has not allowed an earned run in 2 starts. Even if Cabrera's command wobbles again and he walks a few guys, his raw stuff, that devastating changeup and the 96+ miles per hour fastball, can still get him out of jams without giving up crooked numbers. When a guy is walking guys but not giving up hits, that usually means a few tense innings, but not a lot of actual scoring. Pittsburgh's pitching staff has also been one of the best in the league at limiting damage with 2 strikes, posting a 49% strikeout rate in those counts, the 4th best in baseball. The Pirates' bullpen can lock things down late. And on the other side, the Cubs have struck out in 28% of their plate appearances against left-handed pitching this season, the 5th highest rate in the majors, showing they can be vulnerable to swing and miss stuff from all angles. Honestly, everything points to a tight, low-scoring affair. The pitching matchup favors it, the weather favors it, the historical trends at this ballpark between these two teams favor it, and yesterday's shutout set the tone for how this series could play out. 5 of the Pirates' last 6 games as road underdogs have also gone under, adding another layer to this. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Minnesota Twins versus Toronto Blue Jays. There's something about Saturday afternoon baseball in April that just hits different. You know, the Rogers Center roof might be closed, might be open, but either way this building has a certain electricity to it right now, and for good reason. Toronto is coming off a statement Friday night where they absolutely dismantled Minnesota to the tune of 10-4, snapping what had been a rough stretch for the home side. And look, the Blue Jays are sitting at 5-7 on the season, which on paper doesn't exactly scream dominance. But let me explain why that record is misleading. This is a team that won the American League pennant just last fall and made it all the way to the World Series. The talent hasn't gone anywhere, it's just been stuck in the training room. We're talking about a club missing Jose Berrios to an elbow stress fracture, Shane Bieber still working back from elbow inflammation, Bowden Francis done for the entire year after UCL reconstruction, Anthony Santander out for months following shoulder surgery, Alejandro Kirk sidelined with a fractured thumb that required a screw to be surgically inserted, and Addison Barger hobbling around on a sprained ankle. That's a brutal list for any organization to absorb 2 weeks into a season. But here's the thing, even with all that carnage, the Jays just hung 10 runs on a Twins team that had won 4 straight. Brandon Valenzuela smacked his first career big league homer Friday night, Dalton Varsho went deep too, and the lineup showed real signs of life. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. remains the heartbeat of this offense, and Andres Gimenez along with Jesus Sanchez have been among the club's most productive hitters early on. Now for today's pitching matchup, Toronto sends Eric Lauer to the mound, a lefty who quietly posted a 3.18 earned run average in over 100 innings last season and earned himself a World Series start where he threw 4 2/3 shutout frames against the Dodgers. Through his early work this year, he's shown solid command with 9 strikeouts against just 1 walk. On the other side, Joe Ryan toes the rubber for Minnesota. Ryan was a first-time All-Star in 2025, and he's got real swing and miss stuff, honestly. But his 2026 hasn't been smooth, sitting at a 4.40 earned run average through 3 starts with a 1.26 whip. His last outing was a bounce-back win, sure, but the start before that in Kansas City was a complete mess in ugly conditions. And Ryan's always been a fly ball pitcher, which is relevant because Rogers' center carries a park factor of 105, making it slightly friendlier to the long ball. The Blue Jays also struck out at just an 18% clip against all pitching last season, the best mark in baseball, meaning they put the ball in play and make you work. Perhaps the biggest edge Toronto holds today, though, is in the bullpen. Jeff Hoffman, Lewis Varland, Tyler Rogers, and Braden Fisher have combined to allow just 2 earned runs in over 26 innings this season, piling up 35 strikeouts in the process. That's an absurd relief unit. Minnesota's bullpen, by contrast, has been held together with tape and prayers, relying on guys like Eric Orsi, Cole Sands, and Anthony Banda who've been worked hard through the recent stretch, a team coming off a 10-run outburst, backed by a rested and dominant pen, with a steady lefty on the mound against a fly ball pitcher in a hitter-friendly park, playing in a building where they won a pennant less than 6 months ago. That all points one direction. As our first pick for this matchup, the Toronto Blue Jays money line is our full game side pick. Friday night's game ended 10-4. Let that number breathe for a second. 14 combined runs in a game between these two clubs, and honestly, not a single person who watched it was shocked by the final score. That game featured 2 home runs from Toronto's side alone, and Minnesota's bats aren't exactly cold either, as the Twins entered the series ranked 7th in all of baseball with 60 runs scored through their first 13 games. That's noteworthy because even with a team batting average of just .221, they've found ways to manufacture runs and put crooked numbers on the board when the opportunity presents itself. Joe Ryan's career tendency to elevate the baseball creates natural home run risk, and when you're pitching inside the Rogers Center with that slightly inflated park factor, even routine fly balls can become souvenirs. On the Toronto side, Eric Lauer was dealing with an illness earlier this week that swept through the Blue Jays clubhouse, and while he's healthy enough to take the ball today, there's always a question of whether a pitcher who's been under the weather will have his full stamina deep into an outing. If Lauer exits early or hits a wall around the 5th inning, that means more innings for relievers on both sides, and that's where things tend to open up. Minnesota's bullpen has been stretched thin over the past week after a 4-game winning streak that required heavy lifting from their relief corps. Cole Sands, Taylor Rogers, and Cody Funderburk have all logged significant work recently, and a taxed bullpen in a park that rewards contact is a recipe for runs to pile up. And while Toronto's bullpen is elite, even elite relievers surrender hits, especially in day games where the ball tends to carry and hitters can pick up spin a touch better in the afternoon light. The Jays' offense showed Friday night that when they get rolling, they can put up crooked innings in bunches, and Minnesota's lineup with Byron Buxton, Josh Bell, Matt Wallner, and Luke Keyshaw has enough pop to contribute to a high-scoring affair from their end too. You've got 2 pitchers in Ryan and Lauer who are both capable, but neither one is an untouchable ace, pitching in a park that favors the hitter, with one bullpen running on fumes and an offense on both sides that's shown the ability to break out. All of that energy pushes the total in one direction. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Athletics versus New York Mets. Look, I know what you're thinking. The Athletics just walked into Citi Field last night and pitched a shutout against one of the more talented rosters in the National League. They won 4-0 and made the Mets look lifeless at the plate. So why on earth would we come back today and say the Mets are the side here? Because baseball has a funny way of correcting itself, and today's matchup is built completely different from last night's. Let's start with the arms. The Athletics are sending Jacob Lopez to the mound, a soft-tossing left-hander who, honestly, has been getting tagged all season. Through his early starts in 2026, he's sitting at a 6.48 earned run average and a 2.28 WHIP. If you're unfamiliar with what a 2.28 WHIP looks like in practice, it basically means he's putting more than 2 base runners on per inning. That is a traffic jam every single frame, and this isn't some fluky blip. Lopez has always been a pitcher who lives on deception and extension rather than raw stuff. He sat in the mid to high 80s on his fastball even during his stronger stretch in 2025 when he posted a 4.08 earned run average across 17 starts and 92 innings for the Athletics. He succeeded then because hitters weren't familiar with his funky release point. But familiarity breeds damage in this sport, and the damage has arrived. Now look at who he's facing. Even without Juan Soto, who's been recovering on the injured list with a right calf strain since April 4th, this Mets lineup is deep. Luis Robert Jr. has been swinging the bat with serious authority, posting one of the fastest average bat speeds on the team since StatCast started tracking that data. Mark Vientos has reemerged as a legitimate middle-of-the-order threat. Francisco Alvarez is driving the ball with elite power from the catcher position. Marcus Semien has started to find his timing after being acquired this offseason, and even Jared Young, a guy most casual fans probably hadn't heard of before this month, has been raking in his limited at-bats filling in for Soto in left field. This is not a lineup that a pitcher with a 2.28 WHIP wants to see in a Saturday afternoon game at Citi Field. On the other side, Kodai Senga takes the ball for the Mets, and this version of Senga looks like the guy who burst onto the scene during his 2023 rookie campaign when he posted a 2.98 earned run average with 202 strikeouts. After a nightmare second half in 2025 that saw him get demoted to the minors, Senga has come out in 2026 throwing his four-seam fastball at 97.4 miles per hour, nearly 3 ticks harder than his 2025 average. His ghost forkball is once again generating swings and misses at an absurd clip. Through 2 starts, he's punched out 16 batters in 11 2/3 innings with a 1.74 FIP that suggests his results might actually get better. That's a terrifying thought for an Athletics lineup that just lost its most dangerous hitter. Brent Rooker, who hit 30 home runs and drove in 89 runs last season while playing all 162 games, was placed on the 10-day injured list yesterday with an oblique strain after hurting himself on a swing during Thursday's game against the Yankees. Oblique injuries are notoriously tricky for hitters because the oblique muscles are central to the rotational mechanics of a swing. Without Rooker in the designated hitter spot, this Athletics lineup loses a significant chunk of its power. Zach Gelliff was recalled to take his place, and while Gelliff has been mashing at AAA, he struck out in a third of his big league plate appearances last year. Nick Kurtz, the reigning American League Rookie of the Year, is a legitimate star at first base, and Jacob Wilson was an all-star at shortstop in 2025. But Senga is not the kind of arm you want to face when your lineup is suddenly thinner. Here's another wrinkle that tips this in the Mets' favor. Jeff McNeil, the former Met who was traded to the Athletics this offseason, is now playing second base for the Athletics. McNeil knows this park, he knows these fans, and he knows the pitching staff from the other side of the clubhouse. But that familiarity cuts both ways. The Mets know McNeil's tendencies too, and Senga has access to all of those internal scouting reports. Former teammates returning to face their old club is one of those narratives that sounds great on paper but rarely swings the outcome of a game the way people expect. The Mets lost last night, yes. Clay Holmes left that start with left hamstring tightness, which is a concern for the rotation going forward. But that has nothing to do with today's game. Senga is a completely different pitcher, and the Mets pitching staff as a whole owns a 2.90 team earned run average compared to the Athletics' bloated 5.20 mark. The quality gap between these two rotations is enormous, and when you pair a dominant starter like Senga against a hittable arm like Lopez, the math gets real simple real fast. As our first pick for this matchup, the New York Mets money line is our full game side pick. You'd think after watching last night's shutout that the scoring environment in this series might stay low, and if Senga were facing a mirror image of himself on the opposite mound, maybe we'd agree. But he's not. He's facing Jacob Lopez, and that changes the entire calculus of how many runs are likely to cross the plate this afternoon. Let's talk about what a 2.28 WHIP actually creates in a baseball game. When a pitcher is putting that many runners on base, it's not just about whether those runners score in any given inning. It's about pitch counts ballooning. It's about the bullpen getting involved earlier than planned. It's about the batting order cycling through and getting additional looks. Lopez has been walking hitters at a high rate and giving up hard contact, which means the Mets should generate plenty of base runners and, eventually, plenty of runs. Even a version of this lineup that's missing Soto has enough firepower with Robert, Vientos, Alvarez, and Lindor to capitalize on all that traffic. And here's the thing people overlook when they see a dominant pitcher like Senga on the other side. Senga is going to get outs, absolutely, but the Athletics have hitters who can make things interesting. Shea Langoliers has been the team's best bat this season, leading the club in home runs early on. Kurtz is a legitimate power threat at 23 years old, coming off a Rookie of the Year campaign. Wilson hit over .310 last year. Tyler Soderstrom transitioned to left field beautifully in 2025 and has shown he can drive the ball. Even with Rooker out, this lineup has enough pop that a couple of pitches left over the heart of the plate straight could leave the yard. Senga's strikeout stuff limits damage, but he's not unhittable, especially when you consider that his 2025 second half saw him post a 5.90 earned run average over 9 starts after returning from the injured list. 2 brilliant outings in 2026 don't erase the reality that Senga can be gotten to when his command slips. The Mets' bullpen situation adds another layer here, with multiple relievers on the 60-day injured list, including Daniel Nunes recovering from his second Tommy John surgery, Tylor Megill dealing with an elbow injury, and Reed Garrett sidelined with elbow inflammation. This is not a full-strength relief corps. Jay Minter is also on the injured list after lat surgery. If Senga exits after 6 or 7 innings with a lead, the bridge to the 9th could get shaky, and that's where the Athletics' bats could tack on a couple of late runs. Now flip it around. Lopez's high walk rate and tendency to give up hard contact mean the Mets should be pushing runs across early and often. A 4 or 5 run output from the Mets feels not just possible but probable against this matchup. If the Athletics can scratch 2 or 3 runs across against Senga or the later innings against a depleted bullpen, you're looking at a combined total that pushes comfortably past what the odds makers have projected. The run-scoring potential on the Mets side alone might be enough to carry this, and any contribution from the Athletics lineup only adds to the tally. Saturday afternoon games at Citi Field tend to bring energy. The weather in Queens today looks pleasant, pushing near 69 degrees, which is a welcome change from the cooler temperatures earlier in the series. Warmer air helps the ball carry, and with 2 lineups that have legitimate power, even a few well-struck fly balls could turn into extra base hits or home runs that wouldn't have cleared on a colder night. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.